Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into something huge, the U.S. military operation that ended with the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. This was a lightning-fast raid, and boy, has it kicked off a massive global debate about sovereignty, justice, and the rules of the game.
Okay, so picture this. It's Saturday, January 3rd, 2026, just after 2 o'clock in the morning in Caracas, Venezuela. The city is quiet, and then, out of nowhere, a massive, top-secret U.S. military operation just descends on the capital. It all started in the dead of night.
And who is leading the charge? We're talking about the Army's elite Delta Force, the best of the best. They were the tip of the spear for a specialized team of about 200 U.S. service members. Their one job? A super high-stakes mission to capture Maduro.
But get this, they were not alone, not by a long shot. Backing them up was an absolutely massive force of 150 aircraft. I mean, we're talking B-1 bombers, state-of-the-art fighter jets, drones, the whole shebang. And they launched from 20 different spots all over the Western Hemisphere. This was a major show of force.
So if you were a resident in Caracas that night, you would have been woken up by this terrifying roar of engines overhead, and then explosions. And as if that wasn't chaotic enough, at the exact same time a U.S. cyberattack hits, knocking out the power. Suddenly, huge parts of the city are plunged into total darkness. No lights, no communication.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly happened on the ground during this raid? It was codenamed Operation Absolute Resolve. Let's break it down.
And when I say this mission was fast, I mean astonishingly fast. The whole thing, from the second U.S. forces hit Venezuelan airspace to the moment they called mission complete, was just a little over 2.5 hours. Think about that. Maduro himself was captured and in U.S. custody less than 90 minutes after the assault even started. Just incredible speed and precision.
From a purely tactical point of view, it was a major success for the U.S. 0 American fatalities, although 7 service members were injured. But on the other side, it was a very different story. Maduro's security detail, which was made up of both Venezuelan and Cuban forces, took some really heavy casualties.
Okay, this brings us to the big question, right? How in the world does the U.S. administration even begin to justify an action this dramatic? I mean, this is an unprecedented move against a sitting head of another country. So, what was the official reason?
Well, the legal justification really hinges on a 2020 indictment from the Department of Justice. And this is key. The document basically reframes the entire situation. It doesn't treat Maduro as a president. Instead, it labels him as the leader of a narco-terrorism organization. So in the eyes of U.S. law, they weren't going after a head of state. They were arresting an indicted criminal.
And then there's the political side of it. The administration rolled out something they're calling the Monroe Doctrine. And yeah, that name is a very deliberate callback to the old Monroe Doctrine, which basically told European powers to stay out of the Americas. This new version, though, is much more proactive. It's a principle that asserts the U.S. has the right to intervene in the Western Hemisphere to take out threats like drug trafficking.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of the global controversy. You've got two completely different stories. The U.S. is saying, hey, this was a law enforcement operation, we were just arresting a wanted criminal. But much of the rest of the world is looking at this and saying, no way, this was a military invasion, a straight-up violation of a country's sovereignty. It's a massive clash of perspectives.
So, as you can probably guess, this whole thing set off an absolute international firestorm. Let's take a look at how the world reacted, because it was divided, to say the least.
Right away, the condemnation started pouring in. And it wasn't just from anyone. We're talking major global players like China and Russia. Even regional neighbors like Brazil and Mexico came out strongly against it. The message was pretty much the same across the board. This was an illegal act of aggression and a really dangerous precedent.
But it wasn't all condemnation. Support started popping up from other places. For example, Argentina's president was literally celebrating. Ecuador's leader called it a major blow against narco-criminals. And then you had others like the UK and Ukraine who were a bit more nuanced. They were basically like, yeah, we're glad Maduro spawned, but we're not so sure about how it was done.
Okay, so all of this leads us to the most critical question on the table. Maduro is gone. Now what? What is the U.S. plan for Venezuela's future? Well, in the hours right after the raid, President Trump was asked that exact question. And his answer? Let's just say it was very direct and, for a lot of people, pretty startling.
He didn't mince words. He stated, unequivocally, that the United States would temporarily govern Venezuela. His reasoning? To prevent chaos, a power vacuum, and to make sure there's a stable, proper transition to whoever comes next.
Later on, his administration officials fleshed this out into a 4-step plan. Step 1, the U.S. takes direct control for a while. Step 2, they seize the country's oil assets to basically pay for the whole transition. Step 3, bring in American companies to rebuild the oil infrastructure. And finally, Step 4, oversee a handover of power to a new, stable Venezuelan government.
So look, if you just judge this by its military objectives, the operation was a stunning success. A dictator is gone. But it leaves this huge, unsettling question hanging in the air. We live in a world with rules, with borders, with international laws. What does it mean for the future when one country can just reach into another and arrest its leader? What kind of precedent has just been set? That's the real question we're all left with.